Shalom. First and foremost, like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash. Double honors the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth with sincerity. And a shout out to the Akims out there in the four corners of the earth to proclaim this truth. Rocket the Yahweh, Rocket the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, Brakatum. Well, they said it, 10 days. In 10 days, Iran has to make a deal, or else they're going to war. Well, they've been preparing for this war for quite some time under the pretext of a peace agreement being made between Tehran and D.C. But they were already going to go to war. That's why King Bibi kept meeting with Donald Trump all this time, because he wasn't satisfied with last year. No, he wanted an even more larger scale attack, and they've been planning this attack for quite some time. Under the guise of, they're trying to build a nuclear weapon. Same shit all over again because they couldn't cause the internal problems, by having the so-called protests, those that were upset, with the economic sanctions against Iran, they tried to turn the protests into internal problems, but had failed to do so because the people of Iran still supported Iran, because of course then, those were internal issues, but like everything else, so they weren't asking for a change in government, but you had Mossad in there trying to cause uprisings, but they had failed to do so. They had failed to institute a coup. Well, with the war going on now, of course, ISIS, it's no wonder that they're all of a sudden sent into Iraq, just right before they start this war, that all these ISIS prisoners from the Kurdistan region is now inside Iraq, inside a prison to be set free, to go into Iran to try and cause even more distress, but it's going to fail, like everything else. So, as we speak, 4 missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, actually hit the carrier group Lincoln. So the USS Abraham Lincoln was hit with 4 hypersonic cruise missiles. So, or actually they were called Fatah 2 missiles, but pretty much they're hypersonic missiles. And Iran says there's a lot more to come, that they're going to start bringing out the heavier arsenal, that just the beginnings of the retaliation yesterday, which scores of hundreds were killed. They're just not telling you those figures because they want everybody to support the war. But hundreds were killed in the retaliatory strikes. Of course, we know that Ayatollah Khomeini was killed in that. And also, it's coming out now that former President Peshkian was also killed in the strikes. Or Abdul Ahmadinejad, I think I'm saying his name wrong, but, he was a previous president. He was also killed. Not to mention, it was the Ayatollah's family. The daughter and granddaughter was also killed in those strikes because it's nothing but terrorists. Oh, and don't forget, they hit a school in southern Iran, because these Israelis are so good at hitting schools. I mean, you've been hearing about it for a long time in Gaza, so of course, like everything else, though. They wanted the U.S. to back a full-scale war because, of course, they were going to use nukes against Tehran with the Samson option if the U.S. didn't do it. So, of course, oh, and don't forget the Epstein files. You got to mention those Epstein files, man. That Donald Trump has indicated all in those Epstein files, which King Biddy has it. So, like everything else, so if he didn't support the war, these files, they'll come out. Because, of course, most of those files that came out were all redacted. Not too much mention of Donald Trump, even though a lot of people know that he's mentioned, a lot, but they're all blacked out. And everybody knows that it's Donald Trump that's fucking blacked out. Because he's one of the greatest pedophiles of all. All these pedophiles in power have been found out. You see, Freemasonry, all that has been exposed. These used to be secret societies, but now everybody knows about the atrocities that they do, right? Even the filmmaker who made Eyes Wide Shut was killed, just for making that movie, because it revealed too much about them. And that's just it, though, is that we're in the time that Jeremiah spoke about in chapter 49 in particularly, where it said that Esau would be uncovered, that his foreskin should be uncovered, and everybody would know. There's no denying now that everybody knows about the Epstein files. That name is quite what used to be secretive. Now it's all over. The Illuminati, that name Illuminati ain't such a secret society anymore. Everybody knows about the Freemasons, the Illuminati. That's quite a common name that they have to even say the name Illuminati, just because it's out there. It's out there now that these people are pedophiles, that, you got nothing but cannibals and pedophiles in power. And of course, as that's getting exposed, they launch their war of terror, They just couldn't cause internal problems inside Iran, so they had to go back to the old drawing board, which is to make everyone believe that Iran was trying to build a nuclear weapon. The same rhetoric as before. How many times are they that close to getting a nuclear weapon? As King Bibi said, he's been saying it for years. I mean, there's tons of clips of him, through the years saying that they're that close to getting a nuclear weapon, And like everything else, so it's always been a guise to get the U.S. to join the war. And, people are being duped because Donald Trump had already declared the war during the State of the Union address with the way that he had worded things without saying it. He already did, and yesterday, of course, he bragged about it. He bragged about killing Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, if you listen to Iran's side of it, of course, there were more killed in the retaliatory strikes, and of course, they vow revenge. And by the way, they already have another Shia cleric to replace Ayatollah Khomeini. The only thing that they've done is just woken them up, because you've heard of the Medes, the Persians, right? The Persian Empire is what you know as Russia and Iran today, and they're teaming up. And you're going to see more and more sophisticated missiles. Now, they say the missile that killed Ayatollah Khomeini was a newer missile, that was one that they couldn't detect. So you're going to see a lot of newer missiles being introduced, and I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Iran has Oreshnik missiles as well. Some of the newer ones from Russia, because Russia's definitely going to be supplying them. And of course, as you know, the economy is going to be affected by this new war. So the Strait of Hormuz is officially closed because, there's missiles flying everywhere. Iran struck at least 8 different places hosting U.S. terrorists, because that's what they are. They terrorize people. They go into countries and they overthrow governments, and they put in terrorists, such as ISIS, and they were hoping that they could do so with Iran months ago, by hiring Mossad provocateurs, and then equipping people with weapons, And while there was some disruptions, it didn't cause the internal conflict like they wanted, so they had to launch this military. They call it Lion Spear or something like that. That's what the Israelis are calling it. And of course, Iran, it's quite simple. True Promise 4. That's the name of their operation, right? So in Operation True Promise 4, we're going to see even more sophisticated weapons hitting everything. This is exciting, man. You should definitely be excited about this. Because that means that through all this, they could usher in the MOTB system. The one that everybody has to, they're mandated to go and get... to pretty much, in order to commerce, you're going to have the proof. You're going to have to show proof that you're a U.S. citizen. See, they've been trying to use this whole ISIS thing over here, as, it means to get people stirred up, right? To want the illegals out, because in order to prove you're, that you're legal, you have to show your bank information, right? I mean, that's what they've been bringing in. Well, you have to have a digital ID, a digital wallet. And ultimately, that's going to become the RFID. They already have it known as the real ID. Everybody's been coerced into getting the real ID, or else you can't enter certain places. But there's going to be a lot more restrictions for not having real ID, which is going to become RFID. And we already know about those. It's to track and trace your every move, man. They want everything scanned and accounted for. They want to know where everybody is at all times, because Esau has always wanted to be like the Most High. It's going to come close to getting his fulfillment of it, but in the midst of all that, in the midst of World War III, the angels of the Most High are going to gather the elect. We pray we're part of the hopeful elect. And we also got the Passover coming up in a few weeks. You see, everything's falling into place. The Most High is speeding things up for the elect's sake, because we've been crying and sighing for the abominations being committed over here for quite some time, being committed all around the world, but mostly Babylon, And like everything else, so, we say Abba Babal at the end of our lessons, so we've been saying it just as long as, Iran has been saying it, pretty much though that, death and destruction will come, because they wanted a war, now they got one, and that's just it. The Most High is mustering up the hosts to battle, the Lord of hosts, which is the weapons of his indignation, and everybody's going to be punished in that valley of Jehoshaphat, which you're seeing it, the build-up to it. That's that whole region there. And it's on fire. How Donald Trump always uses that as a guise to send ISIS and National Guard into cities because it's on fire? Well, a lot of those bases are on fire now. because they provoked the Medo-Persian Empire, and the Medes, well, they're going to be joining, which are the modern day Russians. They're going to be joining in as well. See, they're not too distracted with Ukraine, because Ukraine is a done deal as well. But they thought they'd keep them distracted with Ukraine, and that would take out their arsenal. But you see, they have much more heavy weaponry. And like everything else, though, it's going to get a lot worse. We ain't seen nothing yet as to the types of missiles that'll be there, but we're beginning to see some of them, and yeah, obviously that it's going to pick up. They're not going to take it lightly. They've already replaced the Ayatollah. They got a new one, and they also got a new IRGC commander. So, just as quickly as they assassinated a bunch of leaders last year, Iran already had replacements. See, it's a full-scale war. And this war in the Persian Gulf is not going to be like it was with Syria and Iraq. They're not going to just be able to go in and topple the government like they hoped to. So we're in the times now that things are about to pick up. Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 14, and it reads, I have heard a rumor from the Most High Yahweh, and an ambassador sent unto the heathen, saying, gather you together and come against her, and rise up to the battle. And that is also known as Armageddon. Which is the Valley of Jehoshaphat, also known as the Mountain of Troops. So you can see multitudes there in that Valley of Jehoshaphat. Edom shall be a desolation. Everyone that goeth by it shall be astonished, and shall hiss at the plagues thereof. What's that? Those plagues? That's when these missiles begin to hit and begin to take it out. Edom should... As in the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Most High Yahweh, that no man shall abide there, neither son of man shall dwell in it, because this place is going to become a desolate wilderness by the destruction left from these missiles that are going to hit very soon. Verse 20, therefore hear the counsel of the Most High Yahweh that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath taken against the inhabitants of Teman. Talking about America being drawn into this war. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate because of them. And just like what we saw with the missile strikes, we're going to see a lot more. Oh yeah, there's going to be casualties on this side. This is also going to gain a lot of support for the war. If they didn't have the support for the war, when they start seeing a lot of Americans killed, hundreds of scores, when they finally start releasing the figures of what's happening in these retaliatory strikes, they're going to want the war. But this is going to lead to their death. The earth is moved at the noise of their fall. The noise thereof was heard in the Red Sea. That is, all the forces that are there. See, all these places hosting bases is about to be hit. Behold, he shall come up and fly as the eagle and spread his wings over Basra. Who's that? Yahweh Shai and the angels, right? And in that day shall the heart of the mighty men of Edom be as the heart of a woman in pangs. And that's talking about the day of destruction. Which also coincides with Damascus being taken out. See, like everything else, so I believe in retaliatory strikes, possibly, and I say possibly because we just know that Damascus will cease in that day, that same hour of destruction, that Damascus will cease from being a city and become an ruinous heap. And that day of destruction is what launches the nuclear missiles. And I believe Iran is probably the one that may actually take them out, or it could be Russia. But then again, whether it's Russia or it's Iran, still at the same time, it's the Medo-Persian Empire, that's going to take it out, Or the Israeli state could do that, right? But Hayat al-Sham, the ISIS group in Syria, hasn't really taken a stand on this. They pretty much, all the bases that were hit in Syria were all owned by the Israeli state, you see. So I just see the Israeli state gaining control of Damascus soon, and that's what causes all this, because they've been using Syria and Iraq to bomb Iran, and like everything else, so you're seeing uprisings everywhere, both in Times Square and in LA. You see uprisings of the people, that are against this war, because who wants another fucking war, right? You got so many internal problems. I've seen somebody post this, and it's hilarious. Funny, they don't have enough money to feed the poor, but they have enough money to fuel the war. To support a war. And Venezuela being taken out had nothing to do with narco-terrorists. It was a preemptive move to have oil when the Strait of Hormuz closed, that they would have, that Israeli state would have exclusive rights to Venezuela's oil. It was the Israeli state's idea to take over Venezuela, which Donald Trump has done. And he's also, Donald Trump ain't done there. He's talked about a free, what you would call a takeover of Cuba, a friendly takeover of Cuba, right? He's talking about, pretty much making Cuba a state, of the U.S. And also still has ambitions for Greenland. And also has been talks about, they've coordinated attacks in Mexico, right? And they gave you that false flag just last week, with the cartels setting everything on fire. Remember that? All those places were on fire, as a means, for this so-called illusion of a cartel war. So that way you could be distracted with that as they launched their terror attacks against Iran once again. Because everybody knew that Trump, once he had gotten Venezuela, that he was going to go after Iran again. And he was going to go after more. That he wanted Greenland, because he was feeling pretty good about it, right? They went in very, very quickly and they got Nicolas Maduro, which he'd been wanting them for quite some time. Because, hey, King Bibi is the king over Babylon. You didn't know that? You didn't know that King Bibi rules Babylon? You couldn't tell that everything that the U.S. does is in the Israeli interest, not the interest of the people. Hey, what do these people over here have fucking to gain if, for a war in Iran? Nothing, right? Except that their children come home in a box. They don't want that, Except the retards that still believe in everything Donald Trump says. When he has failed as a leader, he has caused economic disruptions. His tariffs have ruined the economy already. How much more is this war in the Persian Gulf going to ruin the economy? See, that's going to be a reason to usher it in. Everything's getting ready. It's getting put into place to bring in the new system. The old world order has, pretty much they need a new one. And the only way to bring in that new world order system of these small cities, to all become merged and to have identification is to pretty much crash the old economy to where cash will be useless. Well, you see cash being phased out. You see that a lot of places, a lot of them don't accept cash anymore. They want credit card payments. They want your banking information, your bank. And the same thing with identification. They want your bank account. They got to know your bank account. You ever notice that, Medi-Cal recipients always have to submit their bank account in order to even continue to show proof of payment, even though SSI, has made payment to them, right? They got to see your direct deposit. They got to know what's going in your bank. So you have to submit this just in order to even reapply for Medi-Cal every year. Or Medicaid, I should say, because, not everybody lives in California. Over here, it's just called Medi-Cal, but Medicaid in order to because like everything else, so with this whole ISIS crackdown and everything else to prove that you're a citizen and everything else, so it's like, wait a minute, been a U.S. citizen for quite some time. What's that got to? Oh, it's all about identification, isn't it? See, real ID, real identification. That's what they want, and they want everyone to have a real ID inserted in them. They want it to be wearable. They want you to submit to everything, all transactions to be recorded, and they need a device to be inserted into everyone, and that is what we know as the MOTB. We've been saying it for a long time, and that it's an implant. They want to implant everyone with a chip, and that all money would be tracked on that chip. And if you got out of line, they just turn the chip off, right? Because the data center that created it, they just push a button and it's gone, And like everything else, though, you see, it's all falling into place. Everything that we told you was going to happen is happening. We're past the great I told you so. We told you that the economy was going to crash and that, Donald Trump, man, he's got a lot of people duped into thinking that America's doing great. It is not doing great because the fact is, though, is that nobody really wants to deal with the U.S., especially over the tariffs. Congress had, of course, said that the tariffs were illegal. Well, what about all the people that were hit hard with the tariffs over here? Well, they want compensation for that, right? So you got that going on as well. And you got a partial government shutdown. The DHS is actually shut down, but they can still support a war. They can still go to war with the DHS and FEMA being shut down. Because, again, this partial shutdown already happened. Now, the rest of of the shutdown is not going to happen until, well, they haven't kicked down the can. They kicked the can down the road until about October 1st for the rest of it. But this partial shutdown began a few weeks ago. So a lot of people working for DHS and Homeland, well, that is Homeland. Well, they're not getting paid, you see. And then you got exhausted crew out there. You know, like I said, the Lincoln just got hit. You know, the Lincoln Carrier Group just got hit with 4 intercontinental ballistic missiles, and Iran's not finished yet. We haven't even seen the big stuff yet. You know, there's going to be more. There's going to be a lot more. It's going to be exciting, man. You're going to start. They're going to have no choice but to reveal to the people that a lot of people were lost. You know, and like everything else, though, you know, say that they did get the regime change that they had wanted, and that Iran supposedly had weapons of mass destruction, right? Because that's how they went into Iraq. They're not going to find proof of it, just like they didn't find proof of that Saddam Hussein had these weapons of mass destruction. You know, all of that had already been taken out. He had already cooperated, and then Operation Desert Fox took it out. You know, if you hadn't seen the previous video. So they had already taken that out. Saddam Hussein didn't have any weapons of mass destruction back in 2003. And everybody knows that. Everybody knows that there was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So how much more do you think that they buy this war? That Iran's developing a nuclear weapon, you see? Like everything else, though. Only the MAGA will actually support the idea of it, you know. A lot of people know that, you know, the whole thing was a smokescreen. It's all been smoke and mirrors. There was never going to be a peace deal with Iran because the P5+1 was already disrupted by Donald Trump. Donald Trump had plans to even attack Iran back in, you know, when he was in the first term. And he did attack Iran. He actually assassinated General Soleimani, you know, which is why he's still wanted in Iran today, you know, for the murder of General Soleimani, which he killed in a terrorist attack in Baghdad. You know, he hit the Iranian embassy in Baghdad. And the Israeli state has bombed the embassy in Damascus and lots of other places, which caused all the other Operation True Promises. And then when they attacked last year. So it's been going on for quite some time. You know, that the only places that Iran has attacked is after they were attacked. And Iran was not using weapons of mass destruction during the 8-year Gulf War. The biggest advocates for the, you know, abolition of nuclear weapons and chemical weapons has been Iran. See, Iran knows that what it's like to be hit with chemical weapons, so they're the strongest against it. Not to mention it's against their religious beliefs to use nuclear weapons. But you see, the U.S., they're not going to acknowledge what Iran has already stated. No, of course not. You see, most people over here, they watch the bullshit CNN News, they watch Fox News, they watch Alex Jones, they watch, you know, everything else but RT and Press TV. I know that they took down those channels off of YouTube, right? Because the truth was getting out. So most people are duped by the U.S. media, which, of course, like everything else, though, the Zionists are eventually going to take over. You are going to shut this down anyways. They're going to shut down our ministry, and they're going to start accusing us. They have AI to do that, to help falsify videos, to falsify things, and to even change our videos. We've already found proof that they had taken a video of ours that was in another language and changed the language completely to English, and then to change the words to Shalom and the name Yahweh to Yahweh, you know, and Yahusha, you know. So they were already altering our videos. How much more? See, they're going to make it look like they could actually take videos that are already made, use AI to alter and switch it around. And there's going to be a lot of false accusations against us. There's going to be, you know, we're going to be persecuted unlike any other. See, all that's coming. Things are ramping up, you know, but we're going to hold that feast, that steadfast, till Yahushua returns, because we're to occupy until he returns. And that's why we're always occupied in prophecy. Prophesying the return of Yahushua, prophesying the downfall of Esau Edom. And this year has been deemed the year of apostasy and of sellouts. So a lot of others will tell you that that's it, you know, that, you know, the Messiah's coming back, right? Remember Yahushua said that watch out for those that are saying the Messiah's coming back, that he's over here, that he's over here, that he's going to return at this time. We're not telling you that. We don't know the time and the day nor the hour, but you're going to see a lot of apostasy. You're going to see a lot of false prophets rise to deceive many into thinking that Yahushua has returned, and in fact has, you know, Not time yet. See, we will tell you straight out the gate that MOTB has to be mandated soon, and most of the world has to be chipped before Yahushua returns, before World War III breaks out. So World War III, yeah, it's here, but the nuclear destruction as part of World War III, that's not going to happen until the MOTB is mandated worldwide. Now that's coming. It hasn't happened yet, but it's beginning to happen. We're seeing the beginning stages of it. So we're going to see a lot more. And they have laws into place. This could be the year. This could be the year that it happens, or as much as next year. But we definitely believe that Donald Trump is that fierce king and cruel lord. And there has been rumors going around, hey, wars, rumors of wars. There's been a rumor that the CIA, that Mossad is also planning to assassinate Donald Trump, and that they got someone else in play after they use him for what they want. They've already created a psyop to make you think that Donald Trump was almost assassinated last year. And then, of course, the Captain Kirk thing, which was a Mossad CIA operation that killed Captain Kirk. And they try to get your feelings about that too. And they always trying to do different things. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if half that rumor is true, that they might actually try to carry out an assassination against Donald Trump. Because there's been a lot of regime changes, and the Israeli state would be the first to do it, just to create a false flag. Because who's the king of false flags? King Bibi, of Israel. The Israeli state, I should say. We know who ISIS is. ISIS is Israeli Secret Intelligence Services, is Mossad. So like everything else, so they're the same IDF that's everywhere. And they train people within ICE over here. That's why ICE and ISIS are the same thing. They're Israeli Secret Intelligence Services. So, like everything else, though, we're in the times that, just right before the missiles will be shot into the four corners of the earth, we're going to see a lot more. We're going to see uprisings, right? And we're going to see more and more death, as these strikes, these retaliatory strikes will continue, right? But most of all, though, this war is going to be in Syria. Why? Because Damascus is going to cease in that day, and I believe that something's going to happen there that's going to cause Damascus to cease. Whether the Israeli state does it, or they take over Damascus and use it as a launching board to attack Iran, which is the most likely scenario. Either Russia or Iran takes it out, or Israeli state uses a Samson option. Either way, though, the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the heart of it, where the Euphrates River is in Syria, as 2 Ezra chapter 16 tells you. Woe be unto thee, Babylon and Asia. Well, that's just it. There's war all over the Persian Gulf. That's Asia, West Asia in particular. Woe be unto thee, Egypt and Syria, which Egypt is another term for Babylon, for America. Gird up yourselves and close the sack of hair, and bewail your children, be sorry, for your destruction is at hand. So there's going to be a lot more casualties coming out, just before the nuclear destruction comes. A sword is sent upon you, and who may turn it back? A fire is sent among you, and who may quench it? So like everything else, so these missiles are going to be hitting everywhere. As you already saw that Iran retaliate, and this time coming in with even bigger missiles. Plagues are sent unto you, and who is he that can drive them away? May any man turn away a hungry lion in the wood, or may anyone quench the fire and stubble when it hath begun to burn? So when these missiles hit, man, you can't quench the fire. So that's talking about the nuclear destruction that's going to come. May anyone turn again the arrow that is shot of a strong archer. The mighty Lord Yahweh sendeth the plagues, and who is he that can drive away? A fire shall go forth from his wrath, and who is he that may quench it? So like everything else, though, World War III is around the corner, and the consequences of being caught in the nuclear destruction is for taking the impending MOTB. It's impending, but it is coming, and we sound like a broken record with it, but you can't say that we didn't warn you. So hopefully all this has been edifying. For that, I'm going to say Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakathum, Jehovah elect. Shalom.